We should go, I say quickly after a moment of confused silence before turning and beginning to walk again, until I hear a faint wince of pain behind me. I turn to see the guy reaching behind his neck as he collapses to the ground with a thud. I rush to his side only to find him completely passed out. I try my best to wake him, but he doesn't budge. I quickly snatch my phone from my pocket to see if I could call anyone for help, but as I look at the screen, I'm met with no signal. I sit there, staring at the screen, hoping the message would go away so I could just call someone, but I knew it wouldn't. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just leave him here. Maybe I could carry him back. He didn't look that heavy, and it seemed like my only option, so I slowly slide my arms underneath him and lift. He's light. Way too light. He felt almost hollow, and the thought of it made my skin crawl. I slowly stand and begin to run through the trees, going as fast as I possibly could, until I had to slow down and stop out of exhaustion, almost falling over. I think it would probably be safer to just walk. I couldn't see my legs very well while holding him, and it probably wouldn't work out well for either of us if I tripped. I look around through the fog as I hear a distant bang echo in the mountains. The closest thing I could guess it would be was a gunshot, but it sounded extremely far, at least a few miles away to be any sort of danger. I soon find my legs moving again as I begin to trawl through the woods, eventually finding my way back to the small ravine I passed on my way up the mountain. As I passed through the rocks, my mind tumbled over, everything. It was all just so strange. Even the beginning of the hike felt surreal, almost dreamlike. And then I find this guy who looks more like a ghost than a person in the middle of the forest, covered from head to toe in cuts and bruises as if he'd been mauled. But he stood there, completely unbothered by it. Hell, the sight of me seemed to frighten him a lot more than his situation did, which was concerning to say the least. Not to mention his skin was white. Like actually white. His hair and eyes too. He was completely void of any colour except blood and dirt. He didn't have anything on him except some plain shorts, which somehow looked almost surgical. I'm not sure how to explain it, or even if I could. The forest was quiet now, and the silence would have deafened me if it wasn't for the faint whirring I could hear off in the distance, slowly getting closer. I decide to turn off the light so I can see into the night sky better, and as I do, I notice several black spots blocking out the stars. Helicopters. Weird. I've never seen helicopters here before, not to mention several of them. All of them had searchlights too. Normally it's just police or fire helicopters that have searchlights around here, but these didn't look like either. As a matter of fact, they didn't seem to have any markings at all. They were just plain black. They moved with a methodical yet unplanned precision, and I soon found myself standing static just watching them dance overhead. I wasn't sure why they were here or what they were looking for, but I had a few guesses. As I gaze at the black pods, one of the lights angles its way towards me, and I flinch as a beam of light glides past me mere inches away before darting off in another direction. I stare in the direction the light went before slowly looking back up to the sky as the helicopters slowly glide further and further away. After a minute or two, I begin walking again, this time without the light. I know this place well enough, and I trusted myself to not fall into a ditch while walking. Not like the light helped much anyway. The fog was so dense now that I could only see a few feet in front of me with or without the light. Snow had begun to fall as I strode through the encompassing mist, twigs and branches snapping under my boots as I went. The cool air washing past me as I look up to watch the snowflakes glide through the air. Before long, I find myself in a familiar clearing, and after a brief look around, I spot my car where I left it, parked in the gravel. I rush over to my car and gently lay the guy down next to it as I pull my phone from my pocket, hoping to find signal, instead finding it bricked out of battery. I stuff my phone back into my jumper as I swing my bag to the floor, pulling it open, desperately searching for the car keys. After a moment of fumbling, I manage to grasp them and I rip them out, hastily rushing to my feet as I jam the keys into the car door. I reach for the glove box, snatching the first aid kit, bursting it open and pulling out anything I could use from it before diving back down next to the guy. After a few minutes of wrapping, I managed to cover every opening I could find on him, replacing the now drenched ribbon on his leg. I reach over carefully to check his pulse, and as I do, I notice something on his forearm that appears to be a small tattoo of some text. Subject 7. I stare at it for a while until my attention snaps to his face as his eyes cautiously begin to open. My spine creaks as my mind wakes from a hazy dream, slowly opening my eyes to find someone leaning over me. I think I've seen them before? I'm not sure I remember. Is that the girl I saw in the woods? But I thought she ran away? No, she ran to me, I think. I look up at the girl, her black hair sailing in the soft wind, her eyes almost glowing in the dark of the somber night. Wait, when did it get so dark? Wait, where am I? Hey, bud, you've been out for a while. You passed out a few hours ago. I look over to see an old-looking grey vehicle parked near some trees. One of the doors haphazardly left open, glowing with a dim light. I look back to the girl as she tucks something into her bag. I had to carry you the rest of the way, but that doesn't matter. How do you feel? I nod. Oh, right, of course, she mumbles. Well, I guess that's a good sign. Hold on, I've got an idea. The girl stands up and zips over to the vehicle. I watch her reach into the open door and grab something before she rushes back to where I now sat upright in the gravel. I forgot, sorry, she says sheepishly while fumbling with what looked like a small notebook and pen. Here, you can use this, she declares as she hands me the book and pen. Takes me a moment to decide what I want to write, but after a few minutes of silent thought, I come up with something. I move the pen across the page, scrawling a single word out in ink before turning the book to her. Thanks. Don't mention it, she returns. What now? I look at her, slowly realizing that I had no clue. I didn't have anywhere to go or anything to do now except hide. I escaped and that's as far as my plan went. I guess I never expected it to actually work. I can take you somewhere if you want, she suggests after a moment's silence. I look down at the paper and slowly write my response. I'm not sure. I don't know where I can go. She looks at the ink and then back up to me. I guess you can come with me, she hums. You good with that? I nod slowly after a brief minute. I don't really have any options. Well, I'll take you back to my place then, she says before standing again. Better there than out in the forest. She reaches her hand down to help me to my feet, and soon we're both sat in the two front seats of the small grey car. I guess if you're going to be hanging around a while, we should probably know each other a little better, she suggests. What's your name? I turn to a new page and quietly write my answer before turning the paper to her. Subject 7. Huh, she murmurs to herself as she stares at the paper before looking up at me. Do you mind if I call you 7? I nod. Well, 7? She reaches her arm under the steering wheel and I hear a click as the engine roars to life. She turns back to me with a faint smile. I'm Nix. The broken streetlights pass flickering overhead as we drive through the night. I expected to get home late, but not nearly this late. Time always seemed to go quicker in that forest. It's going to be hard to explain everything else to my brother, though. He usually expects me to be late, but he'll definitely have questions this time. I sit silently in thought for a while until I notice something in the sky again. It's the helicopters, though they're moving a lot faster than before and the searchlights are off. I watch them glide under the stars for a moment before the snowflakes carry my eyes back down to the road. I've been driving for maybe an hour now, and we've only just gotten out of the forest. It's still a good distance before we get to the apartments too. But it's left me a lot of time to think. There's been a lot of really weird coincidences today, and I have a sneaking suspicion they're not unrelated. Whatever it is, I have the feeling I've gotten wrapped up into something by accident. The radios, the helicopters, and a person apparently named Subject 7 appearing in the middle of the woods, injured and barely clothed. I would have taken this guy to the hospital, maybe the police, if my gut instinct didn't persistently warn me otherwise. My gut saved my skin more times than I remember, so I feel inclined to trust it, even if it seems a bit stupid. I look to the side, watching the dull buildings pass by as we drift along the murky tarmac. The signs battered and walls marked with tags as dead grass pokes through the snow and interweaves with chain-link fences. As we drift further into the town, the buildings slowly become more refined, and while not particularly great, they are noticeably more lived in. The street lights rarely flicker now as the graffiti and tags become less obvious in their placement. I glance over at Seven before darting my eyes back to the road. I've been looking at him every so often for the past hour because, well, I swear every time I look at him, another cut or bruise seems to vanish. He still doesn't look great, but almost every light gash he had has all but disappeared by now. Though I'm still not sure why he passed out in the forest. It can't have been blood loss. He didn't once seem dizzy or faint while walking until he just dropped. Maybe it was stress or something? I'm snapped out of thought as I begin to notice the familiar surroundings. We're only a minute or so away now, the road sliding beneath us as we turn into a small web of old apartment buildings. I slowly drive us to a vacant space, squeezing between two other unremarkable cars as the engine slows to a stop. Well, we're here, I announce as I unbuckle my seatbelt, Seven following suit while I lean in between the seats to grab a black hoodie my brother had left on the back seat. You might want to put this on, I suggest while handing Seven the jacket. He looks at it curiously for a moment before sliding it over his head. After a little struggle, he manages to push his arms through the sleeves. He glances down at himself. Right, we should go, I propose while opening the car door to be met with a blast of frigid air. I look over the car to find Seven already closing the door and walking around to the front of the car. I follow suit and lead him through the small network of buildings, the snow crunching under my boots as he treads in silence behind me. Now, I probably should have mentioned earlier, but I forgot about it. I don't live alone, so don't do anything weird. I'll take care of it, okay? He looks at me, casting a subtle nod before we continue our stroll to the apartment. We pass under the surprisingly fresh lights as the old security camera sits silent, watching the doors with an almost ancient vigilance. As we approach the door, I plunge my arm into my pocket in a search for my keys, and just as I wrap my hand around them, the door opens. Well, my brother hums with a relieved smile. Look who it is.